The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 115.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Bravehearty.
Change, my dear, and it seems not a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Position healers. Wearing a bit thin.
Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who. Today we're discussing the 10th Doctor story, The Lazarus Experiment. And joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Aiken. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Corey Stika. Hi, Father Corey.
How's it going, Dom?
So, folks, remember to like The Secrets of Doctor Who on our Facebook page and to retweet the show on Twitter, where we're at SQPN. Please leave us comments in both places, any place you see it, so that we can get some great feedback from you to share on the show, and we have some feedback to share later on in the episode. And if you are not yet subscribed, why not? Please subscribe in iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, your favorite podcast app, or on YouTube, where you should hit the bell to get notifications of new episodes. And above all, please share the podcast with your friends to help us grow this community and to reach more listeners. And if you can, please go to iTunes or other podcast directories and write a review. That is one of the most important ways you can help us reach new people, is those reviews. So I do,
especially if you can give us 5 stars.
Yes. Well, don't write reviews unless you can give us 5 stars. That's what I want to say.
Yeah.
So that's a little yelping advice there. So what we're talking about today is the Lazarus Experiment, which is a 10th Doctor David Tennant episode, which aired
with Martha
and Martha Jones, yes, and aired in May of 2007, and it has a number of notable aspects to it, including the fact that it features Mark Gatiss, who has written a number of Doctor Who episodes, including a couple before this, including not in Child.
Well, his involvement with Doctor Who actually goes back to the pre-revival series. He first wrote, I understand, a Doctor Who novel back during the gap between the 7th Doctor and the TV movie.
Yep.
And he then began to get involved in fan productions, including Big Finish and some kind of off the books video revivals of Doctor Who.
Some very strange off the books video revivals featuring Colin Baker, right?
Yeah, and others. And he eventually then became a pro working for the series itself. And we've seen him in a few other things. This is, I think, his first on-screen appearance, although I could be wrong about that.
Yeah.
But you get to see him also in Twice Upon a Time, where he plays the World War I soldier that the 1st and the 13th Doctor get in an adventure with.
Who is apparently the Brigadier's Lethbridge Stewart's ancestor of some sort, father, grandfather, or something. Right. He was in The Wedding of River Song. He was in A Good Man Goes to War, and in
Heavy Makeup.
Yes. And he voices Danny Boy in Victory of the Daleks, apparently. So interesting. So, and now you'll recognize him as also the writing partner of Stephen Moffat, and they are now among two of the most in-demand writing duos in Britain.
Responsible
TV.
For Sherlock.
Yes. So that's Mark Gatiss shows up here.
And he also plays Mycroft in Sherlock, if you've seen that show.
Right. He's a really great actor, and I really enjoy him. Unfortunately, in this one, there are aspects of this one where not as great. Some parts are great.
Dr. Lazarus.
Yes, he plays Dr. Lazarus in this one. It also features, just to kind of preview, lots of Harold Saxon references, which are going to be important for later on in the season with the Return of the Master and John Sim. They're prepping us. This is another one of those Bad Wolf style arc preparations.
There's also a surprising number of callbacks to the very beginning of the revived series of Doctor Who, where it's like they're deliberately retreading some of that ground with Martha that they originally went over with Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's right. Because what we've got here is the Doctor and Martha returning to present day, say, whatever that actual present day is in the Doctor Who universe is. But they're returning for the first time since the Doctor took her away for one trip, which turned out to be, 5 or 6 trips.
It got embiggened.
Yes. And they went to see Shakespeare, et cetera, et cetera. So now that they're back, that becomes an element in this story is, well, what now? That's really kind of the beginning end of the story. But before,
because we're only halfway through the season,
right? So let me see.
So the Doctor drops her off and dematerializes the TARDIS, and then immediately comes back. And because they've seen something on television where Dr. Lazarus has said, as an old man, I'm going to change what it means to be human. The Doctor gets in the TARDIS, dematerializes, comes back, and what did he say? And this is our first callback, because that's how the Doctor got Rose aboard the TARDIS, was with the dematerialization and a quick return.
Right. That's true. Okay. I forgot that. There was an interesting Christmas Carol reference here too, by the way, not to the episode we just talked about, but to Dickens' Christmas Carol in general, where he says, I got you back the morning after you left, even though we went to Shakespeare's London, New York, Old New York, all in one night, which is a call. It's something that we hear from Scrooge in that about the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. So I thought that was kind of a funny. I don't know if it was an intentional reference, but it felt like it. So there's this Professor Lazarus who's on TV, standing next to Martha's sister Letitia, Tish, who is apparently working as his PR person, and he is working for we find out Harold Saxon, and on this science experiment has something to do with Harold Saxon.
It just struck me for the first time that Tish and Letitia, and therefore Tish would be derived from joy.
Letitia is
in Latin.
Okay, because exactly.
Oh, cool.
Letitia's maybe that's a nice name. So much to think of for their child. I doubt we'll have the opportunity to use it, but so much to use it. So, Dr. Lazarus, let's talk about the name first.
Obvious trait name.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Lazarus, of course, is a reference to, and for those who don't know, so shouldn't say of course, is a reference to the biblical character of Lazarus, who was a friend of Jesus and brother to Martha and Mary. And Jesus had heard that was sent a message that Lazarus had died. And so Jesus showed up 3 days later and had them open the tomb and called Lazarus forth and raised Lazarus from the dead.
I like how when he's about to do that, like Martha says, it is the 4th day. Behold, there will be a smell.
Yes, very practical Martha. Yes, I like that. Yeah. Well, and again, interesting. Martha is a common name. I don't know if that's intentional, but
then there are some.
Probably not, but it's a nice coincidence.
There's some references in this, though, to the Lazarus story of, the going to the cathedral and the resurrection and things like that. I mean, there are very much references to the Lazarus story.
Yeah, he emerges from that device, sort of like being called forth from the tomb, etc. That sort of thing. So
also, while we're playing the name game, if you're wondering why Lazarus, because it's got that us on the end, it sounds like a Latin name, but it's clearly not. It's a Hebrew name. It's a Latinate form of the Hebrew name Azariah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. I didn't know that. That's a good one. Yeah, a lot of the names we see in the gospel, including Jesus, are Latin versions of Hebrew names. Jesus in Hebrew would have been Yeshua or Joshua. But that would be confusing if we need Jesus' name to stand alone in the Bible. So the Doctor then disappears and comes back and says, "I'm sorry, did he say he was going to change what it means to be human?" And so he he's going to stick around for that. And he wrangles a invite to be +1 for Martha at the unveiling, the black tie event.
And that's our second reference, because in the end of the world, the doctor says Rose is my +1. Here, Martha says the doctor is her +1.
Right. He also says that going in, every time I wear black tie, something bad happens. Is that a reference to something particular or just in general?
I think just in general.
Because Martha responds, "Isn't that everywhere you go?"
Yeah.
Right. Although, in Rise of the Cybermen, in the alternate, the parallel world, the doctor wears black tie to Jackie's birthday party. And the Cybermen show up. So yes, that is a sort of another callback. The doctor has an awkward encounter with Martha's mom, which is
who
interesting.
Slaps him. And again, Jackie slapped the doctor in Aliens of London, one of the very first Rose episodes.
And in fact, he makes makes a reference to that. Well, what is it? You go ahead and say what he said, because I don't remember.
It's always the mom. It's like every mom.
That's right. Always the mom slapping him. That's what it was. And Martha's mom, Francine, let's call her, give her name, Francine, has reason to be suspicious of the doctor. I mean, she's a little overbearing. Let's just be clear on that. But she's so suspicious of this guy who Martha apparently just met last night and has been with ever since then or something. I mean, she has a little bit of a reason to be a little suspicious.
Yeah. They never warm up her as much as they warmed up Jackie.
No.
But she's also a more functional human being than Jackie is. I mean, Jackie's getting by, but Martha's mom is, a successful professional person who genuinely does. She has ex-husband issues, but she genuinely does care about her children and is looking out for them.
That's right.
She just unfortunately comes across as very unlikable, at least in this one.
Yeah. Well,
she's better in others.
Yes. Yeah. And in fact, I was going to say the later on in the episode, she gets more reason to dislike the doctor when a
mysterious man who is not credited or whose name is not given.
Right.
In the story.
He keeps like, there's something you need to know about this man called the doctor, and whispers things to Francine, who really gets upset at that point. But we never find out at this point here what it has to do with, but it's Harold Saxon, the master, poisoning the well against the doctor.
Only at this point, we don't know who Harold Saxon is.
That's right.
Yeah, he's just been mentioned a few times. We don't even have an idea of where he is or what he's doing. He's just some guy.
Right. We have Lazarus, Dr. Lazarus, talking with Lady Thaw, who's an elderly woman who's apparently his co-conspirator in this issue.
What a name. I mean, you thought Lazarus was interesting. Lady Thaw. What's with that?
Like, I mean, this is like eponymy. Like you are like, this is super villain eponymy. You are, if you're called Lady Thaw, you're going to be a super villain. That's like, I'm suspicious of you from the beginning.
And she does kind of have a thaw in this. I mean, she's initially coming across as very cold. Well, okay, so we see Mark Gatiss early on in this terrible old man makeup. Right. And I had forgotten what this episode was about because it'd been so many years since I'd watched it. But as soon as I saw Mark Gatiss in the terrible old man makeup, and I know this is called the Lazarus Experiment, I say, this is going to be an age reversal thing. He's going to get out of that terrible old man makeup by being rejuvenated. And when that happens, people start thinking he's attractive, including Lady Thaw. She has an emotional thaw with him and wants to rule the world, at which point he sucks all the life energy out of her.
Right. So she dies early in this episode, but not before the newly young Lazarus rejects her as, have you seen yourself? I mean,
it's like, dude, that was you 5 minutes ago.
Yes, I mean, that was cold, and even for Lady Thaw, that was cold to her.
There's another aspect of Lazarus that's creepy too, where early on, when he's still an old man, he's talking to Tish, Martha's sister.
Oh yeah,
and he's like putting the moves on her as an old man, saying,
what kind of perfume?
Interesting perfume. What's that called? And she says, soap. And it's like, oh, snap.
Yeah.
That was, although, yeah. Go ahead.
But then after he becomes young, suddenly Tish is like, I don't care. I'm an ageist. I love this new sexy young Mark Gaddis. And she has her own emotional thaw regarding him.
Yeah, that was pretty shallow on the part of Tish there. Speaking of the wig, because that's what he's wearing is this wig that he's got. Apparently, this was Mark Gaddis's own prop wig that he kept from another show that he had done, which was
The League of Gentlemen.
The League of Gentlemen, that's right, where he played a veterinary surgeon based on Peter Davison's character in All Creatures Great and Small, which is a kind of interesting connection of things, because all things connect back to Doctor Who in British TV. And,
everything connects to Doctor Who
they had
in
trouble.
British TV.
Yeah, they had trouble getting an appropriate, good wig for him to wear in this, so he went home and got this one that he'd apparently kept from that. So he looks nice and young in this. The Doctor recognizes the process. They're using hypersonic sound waves to create a state of resonance. Is this because the Master was supplying Lazarus with Time Lord tech? Is this how Lazarus was able to?
I didn't get that out of it.
No, but I mean, they don't actually come out and say it. But given that the connection to Harold Saxon that we see, like, how else is Lazarus Laboratories get this advance?
Yeah, well, he said that, he had been a child during the Blitz, and he dedicated his life to finding a way to cheat death. So I assume he's been working on this his whole life. But we do know that Mr. Saxon has been giving him funding.
Right.
So there is some involvement with the Master, but whether it's merely financial or also technological, they don't really say.
I took the doctor's line as this is yet another case where the Doctor knows everything technological. He knows everything. He knows exactly what it is just by glancing at it.
That's true. It was because of the sonic technology seems to be the basis of Time Lord technology that I thought that might be a connection.
Except with the Master, instead of having a sonic screwdriver, he's got a laser screwdriver because he's a villain. It has to be cooler.
That's right. Yep. That's true. Standing on the top of the building with Tish when he's trying to make the move on her, Lazarus points out where he grew up, and this is when he was talking with Lady Thaw before he mummified her. Are you my mummy? And he says,
no.
She says that place should have a blue plaque on it. And for our American listeners who don't understand the reference, in Britain, historical markers have an iconic sort of blue plaque. Yeah, something that gets the blue plaque is a historical, we would say it's on the National Register of Historic Places. That's how Americans
we have similar things. You drive down the highway in the middle of nowhere and there'll be a historical marker.
Right. And that's so in Britain, which has more history than we do. I'm not jealous at all. They have more of them, apparently. So then we have the Doctor's suspicious of what he's seeing. Lazarus is having these reactions. And
his DNA is mutating.
Yes. The Doctor does a DNA test where he sees this helix mutating on screen in front of him. That's not how DNA tests work.
Yeah, I was going to say, isn't it amazing that DNA scan where it's real time, where they can actually watch the DNA change in real time? Yeah, no, that doesn't
not
happen,
how it works, folks. From the DNA you harvested from a glass, or was it the glass that they got?
No, kiss the back of her hand.
The back of her hand. Yes. So
he's already screened out Martha's DNA or Tish's DNA from that.
Yes.
Whichever one it was. I'm forgetting now.
Yes. I think
Martha.
It was Martha. Yeah. But we'll just move on from that one.
This is kind of one of those, where, Star Trek falls into this too, where, you change someone's DNA. So of course their body immediately changes. Their entire body immediately changes to this new DNA code.
Right.
And then it leads them to shapeshift where, he goes from, old man to young man to monster back to young man,
Right.
Yeah.
And because the DNA mutates.
Also, like Star Trek in Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock, he's gaining all of this body mass from nowhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, you don't gain body mass without eating and metabolizing, and he's not doing that.
They do kind of try to make it connected by the fact that he's got this energy deficit. So he's gobbling down all the hors d'oeuvres, and then he's sucking people dry. like a giant spider, and they're trying to claim that that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, but
it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Yeah, because he gets huge like that before he's sucked anybody dry. So now I get where he's on the roof with Tish. We do have this interesting little wordplay between him and the doctor, between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act. And the doctor says, "Falls the shadow," and it's a quote from T.S. Eliot, The Hollow Man.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, that sounds really cool. What does it mean? Like, what does it have to do with what you're talking about? I didn't get why they, apart from to show how smart they are. I didn't understand what the point was.
It's setting up. It's bringing T.S. Eliot in, and I mean, there's no surface level that I saw either. But it's bringing in T.S. Eliot so that we can have the "not with a bang but a whimper" line later on in the episode.
Right. Okay. So the doctor does talk about the curse, the potential curse of living too long. That's something that the doctor often has been bringing up, especially in the revival, with the 10th and 11th Doctor. This idea of living too long and seeing everyone die, et cetera, et cetera. So it's interesting. It's that he has the perspective to offer to Lazarus here, who doesn't realize, and then we get the first full glimpse of the actual Lazarus scorpion, which I got to say, that's a really creepy monster.
It's creepy, but for me, this was bad monster design, especially the jaw.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is creepy, but it also looks ridiculous.
Well, it goes back to me that this is kids programming.
Yeah.
It just said as a kid, it'll give me nightmares.
It looked like a creature from like a mid-90s video game,
Scorpion,
including the just how they overlay the graphic of his face,
right?
Just looks bad.
It looks as bad as the Scorpion King visual effects that from the original movie The Mummy, and then later on the sequel with Dwayne Johnson The Rock as the Scorpion King. That was really bad CGI, and this was on par with that. Yeah, because the face had no resemblance to Mark Gatiss.
It didn't look like him. Yeah.
Nope.
Also, and even worse than the visual effects are the plot holes here. So when we have the monster attacking, call 999 lady.
Right. Nobody calls the police.
And then when the security alert happens in the building, we have a security alert that traps people in a building.
It seems
really?
like a bad idea.
It's kind of normally the opposite. You want to get people out of the building, not lock them in it.
Right. Yes. This is a common supervillain trope, right? The lockdown. We lock down the lair so that no one can get out. Never mind that it violates all the fire codes, which the supervillains do not respect.
But at least the sonic screwdriver can overrule it, so that helps.
Yes, and Martha goes to town with it.
But here, there's no reason for it. It's just like, okay, the monster has triggered a security alert, and that locks everyone in the building.
Yes.
And it's like, that's not how you design security systems to protect the public.
No, it should maybe layered, maybe lock down certain sensitive areas, and then the public areas should open out to get everybody out.
All doors should open automatically with lights pointing the way. That's why we have exit signs. It's for emergencies like this.
Right.
Well, that's
right.
I think you could say, well, it's so that they can't carry out that big cabinet full of technology that is top secret, whatever. But still,
yeah. Well, that's why you lock down the sensitive areas, but open up the non-sensitive areas. But,
exactly.
Right. One thing is interesting to point out, the logo for Lazarus Laboratories, I don't know if you've noticed it, is very similar to the symbol that we will see on the Master's ring at the end of the season. So it's kind of so that they're making that obvious, that connection going to be a little more obvious. Now I get, back to Francine, I get her fear on behalf of Martha, her fear, but her anger that she gets for the doctor, she gets excessively angry at the doctor, and I don't understand it. It just seems a little beyond, okay, I'm scared and lashing out. This seems like no, I'm offended by your presence. And I don't get it. It seems
really early.
Yeah, it's too soon for that.
And this
even
is
before the mystery
across,
man poisons her against the doctor.
Right.
That's where I says she comes across as unlikable because, I mean, she's just immediately attacking the doctor for seemingly no reason other than she just doesn't like the fact the doctor is hanging out with her daughter.
Right. Yeah, that's actually a big, like, so your daughter not supposed to have a social life? I mean, it seemed weird. There is a nice callback to Classic Who where the doctor says it took him too long to reverse the polarity. He must be out of practice.
Yep.
That's a nice third Doctor callback. And he does talk about the last time he was slapped in the face by a mom. It was Jackie Tyler. And then we get this interesting interplay between the Doctor and Lazarus where he says, facing death is part of being human. You can't change that. And Lazarus says, no, Doctor, avoiding death, that's being human. It's our strongest impulse to cling to life with every fiber of being. And I thought that was a very interesting fact because both in some ways are true. So which do you think, who has the stronger argument here between them? What do you think? I'm asking you, what do you think is the stronger argument?
I don't know that that one necessarily is stronger than the other. We do have a very powerful, like every other living creature, we have a powerful survival instinct, and that can be overridden in some situations. But we do have a very strong survival instinct, and at least in the present condition of humanity, death is an inescapable reality that we all have to face, except for me, of course.
Yes, except for the Doctor, of course. Okay. I just thought it was a very interesting, true moment in the midst of a sort of what could be a kind of a campy runabout screaming with your hair on fire episode. There's this moment to address the human condition in a fundamental way, and which I kind of enjoyed.
I like the complexity. Yeah, I like the complexity of that. I like how we get the villain in this episode is not purely a villain. He's got reasonable points. Don't agree with him on everything, but he makes reasonable points at times. And we even get a scene with him later where he's talking about his time as a child experiencing the Blitz, where he's genuinely emotionally vulnerable. And that's nice, too.
Right. And it's easy and too easy sometimes for a lot of shows, including Doctor Who, to kind of fall into the villain says things that are easily refuted by the hero because they're so wrong. But this is one of those cases where it's not so easy, and I like that.
Another nice line of this is the Doctor says, if you live long enough, the only certainty is that you'll end up alone.
Right.
And that's, of course, that's hyperbole, but there's an element of truth there, and that's nice. We also have an on the nose return from the dead for Lazarus because he at the confrontation at the, I guess, business headquarters, he ends up reverting to human. They reverse the polarity on the thing and reverts him to human and kills him. And that's when we get this is how the world ends, not with a bang, but a whimper line from T.S. Eliot. They put him in an ambulance to take his corpse off, and he comes back, and the Doctor's like, should have known Lazarus comes back from the dead.
Yes, that was a bit on the nose there. And he escapes to a cathedral, which the exterior of the cathedral is Southwark Cathedral that they mention, that they show. They call it that, but the interior is I think it's called Wells Cathedral. The interior was filmed in it. It's a beautiful Gothic. Am I off base on that?
I didn't look at the architecture that closely, but it's old.
Cathedral. Let's put it that way. But beautiful old church. And this is where, as you mentioned, Lazarus, as a child, went to escape from the Blitz, and so Martha and Tish and the Doctor are in there, and they confront him, and he's about to transform again. They know, and Martha, in full silly companion mode.
Well, it's not full silly because the Doctor says if I could get him up to the top of the bell tower, I could do something. Maybe I've got an idea. And so Martha grabs Tish and they start luring him towards the top of the bell tower as he's transforming. I get it. She comes very close to dying.
she very almost got in way over her head, so to speak.
Yeah.
But yes, everything turned out well. So the doctor,
go ahead.
The doctor's solution is to use the sonic process, to use the cathedral's organ to send out to amplified sound waves that will knock him
with the sonic screwdriver.
Right. Yep. That will knock him from the height of the bell tower to the floor.
Turns the organ up to 11. Good.
Yes.
Spinal Tap reference.
Spinal Tap reference.
Yep. And then
and a name drop of Bach or Beethoven.
Yes. Right. What does he say? There was something particular about Beethoven that he says.
You hang around with him, you pick up a few things.
Right.
Something like that.
Right. Because he does the especially about playing loud. Martha says, he says sorry, as in sorry, what?
Yeah.
So
that was nice.
The deaf reference
cups his ear.
Yes. But the fact is the doctor was almost too late. If it wasn't for Tish, Martha fell. Tish grabbed her wrist as she was falling. The doctor had waited too long to get things going there. So it's a very dear thing there. And then we wrap things up nicely there. The monster is dead. Lazarus is dead again. And we go back to Martha's house where the doctor says, well, something else that just kind of escalated then, right? That's as he's referring to the previous trips. And he offers to take her again. And she says,
and she's earned it at this point.
Right.
You know, in that whole sequence where she's leading up to the bell tower, this is Martha earning another trip.
Right.
And that would be the easy thing for them to do is say, okay, got another trip. Let's go. Yes. And the doctor says that. And then Martha says no.
Yes.
Because she's been treated as like
a passenger,
his rebound girl from Rose.
Right.
And she wants to be respected in her own right. And this is the second time she stood up to him. Previously in Gridlock, she said, I'm not going anywhere until you really tell me who you are and where you're from. And he honored that, and he sat down and opened up to her. And here she does it again. She stands up to him again and says, I don't want to go with you unless I'm a proper companion, in other words.
Yes.
And he says yes again. Yeah. And so I like how she stands up for herself, and that motivates him to give her more respect.
I also like how she misunderstands his yes. He says, okay, if that's what you want. Okay. And she's like, fine, you just go now. We've already said goodbye. And he's like, what? I said okay.
Yeah.
Very much a man-woman moment there, misunderstanding each other. And then the doctor kind of admits, well, you never really were just a passenger, were you? Like, he sort of admits that the whole I'll take you on one trip was really never what he meant or what he really intended. So, but as the TARDIS dematerializes, we get there. Martha's phone rings again, and the answering machine picks up. For those of you who are too young, answering machines are these machines we used to attach to our phones before there was voicemail that would record messages.
And old people still do, and then they'll listen to who's talking on the answer machine to decide do they want to pick up or not.
Yes, they screen
instead
their
of
calls.
Instead of just looking at caller ID and deciding whether or not to answer.
Right. Man, it's how quickly things get age here. So it's Martha's mom calling again, and she says, I know who the doctor is. He's dangerous. This information comes from Harold Saxon himself. You're not safe, which is actually true. No one who travels with the doctor
saw how true that is.
Yes, and coming up next time, Martha and the doctor nearly die again. So it's very true. And so with their this is not the first setup for the end of the season finale, but it's certainly a big advance in that story arc here in this episode. So a relatively quick, straightforward episode. I mean, there's a lot
going on.
Yeah, it's a lot of running about, screaming, blowing things up, sort of stuff. But
almost a half marathon of running through corridors.
Exactly. Oh, that's a reference to something else. Reference acknowledged. So, do either of you have any other notes on this episode? Anything I missed?
Yeah, just kind of a silly thing, but obviously women's legs are much stronger than men's are because Tish and Martha ran a lot of miles on those heels.
Oh, no kidding, man! Props to women. going up the staircase in those in the cathedral.
And then there was a good line where Martha and Tish and the doctor are standing in front of the cathedral, and that they figured out that's where Lazarus had gone. And the doctor says, "Well, where else would you go looking for sanctuary?"
Yes, very interesting. It's sort of a it's sort of a reference to the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but a broader reference to the concept that people used to find sanctuary in churches when they were running from persecution or the law or whatnot. So great. All right. So that's what we have for that. And we do have a little bit of feedback from a previous episode. Let me see here. We have from our episode where we discussed gridlock on our Facebook page. Amy Flowers, our friend who comments quite often, says about the Face of Bo. The identity of the Face of Bo was revealed in the episode "The Last of the Time Lords," that it was Jack Harkness. So thank you, Amy, for reminding us of the exact episode. And then Danny Butler, who we also heard from last time, he has something on this episode, Gridlock, says that Russell T Davies was an atheist, so he did a very faith-affirming thing here on purpose. And he's referring to the hymns that were sung in that episode. Says, I suppose having family and friends with the kind of faith one could admire inspired him to do this. Of course, what he didn't realize at first is that there's a dark twist. The people are all full of hope in Gridlock, but are ultimately going nowhere. It's a great example of the kind of storytelling that reflects some of our religious discussions. So I think he's saying that it's sort of symbolic of people have the outward appearances of faith, but it's not getting them where they're going because it doesn't have the depth that's required, apparently, or something like that.
I'm not sure that I would take that lesson away from it. I do because their faith isn't really it is what gets them through this bad situation, but it's not like they're foolish on account of this. Their faith is not making them foolish; it's enabling them to cope. And Martha recognizes that. And I agree. I do agree, though, that it is a nice faith affirming thing that Russell T Davies is doing despite his atheism. I think one of the best examples of that in science fiction television is J. Michael Straczynski on Babylon 5, because even though he was an atheist, he made religion a very prominent thing in the show and treated it quite respectfully. He even particularly with the introduction of the Dominican monks to the station, and even after the main series, if you look at the Lost Tales, which are a series of short Babylon 5 movies that are all on a single DVD, the lead one is about an exorcism on Babylon 5, and it's a demon that has gotten off of Earth, and it's a real demon. You know, so even though he was personally an atheist, he was open to exploring these religious ideas in a fictional universe. Yeah, and then Russell T Davies apparently is so as well, like we had with the Satan Pit, and the Impossible Planet. Yes. So very good. Well, thank you both, Danny and Amy, for your feedback, and we love to get more feedback from you folks. So please, like you said, let us know, and I'll go to sqpn.com. or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send us an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who. Today, we want to thank by name Evan S., Marika D., Dwayne A., Father Darrell, and Matt M. Through their generous donations at sqpn.com/give, they make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows we do at sqpn.com. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. You can find links to all of our personal social media and websites on our show notes at sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the fourth Doctor story, the Sontaran Experiment. So this week was the Lazarus Experiment. Next time, it's the Sontaran Experiment. So until then, Father Corey Stika, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Well, thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Aiken, thank you as well.
Thanks, Dom.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, we need to turn this up to 11.
Right. This is going to be fun.